Adam Smith was the founder, the father of economics, who had defined about the operation of invisible hand. Autonomous consumption, one which happens automatically without any kind of external activity. What happens automatically is autonomous consumption. The law of demand states that quantity purchased varies inversely with price. So price and demand are inversely proportional. Good morning and welcome to the model question paper solving session for second PUC Economics 23-24. We all know that there has been a change in the model question paper. That's in the final paper, that this time it's going to be 80 marks on the theory, 20 marks on the internals. But nevertheless, the questions are not changing much. The syllabus has been altered to a very little extent. So let us just go through some of the questions that are likely to come for your final examinations. So let us start answering the questions with the 1 markers. Now, the first question, which one of the following is an example of microeconomic? Moment you get that word microeconomic, that means to say that obviously the answer would be consumer behavior, because the other things are talking about macro level, national income, unemployment, foreign trade. All these things are at a macro level, but consumer is an individual. So that's a micro level. So the answer would be consumer behavior. Let's move further. The shape of an indifference curve. Now, the shape of an indifference curve, we always know that the shape of an indifference curve is something like this. So when you draw this line, you would see that the indifference curve is like this, which means it is convex to the origin. That's what we always need to say. Concave is opposite, so please don't put it. It cannot be horizontal or vertical, so automatically these two options are ruled out. The only possibility is that it should be option A or option B. Obviously, it will be option A because it is convex to the origin. Followed by the third question, the market structure which produces heterogeneous product. The keyword that you have to keep in your mind is heterogeneous, which means it's not the one kind of product, multiple kinds of products that we are talking about. So the answer would be monopolistic. So just keep this in mind. But anyway, this chapter is now getting out of the syllabus, so no need to worry much about it. Followed by the year of Great Depression. The year of Great Depression was 1929. Now, this is a challenging question. Why I would say is that though it's simple, 2022 cannot happen at all. 1889 is way behind. So the chances is 1920 versus 1929, and the obvious answer is 1929. In this standard, all currencies are defined in gold. Obviously, the answer is given there automatically. So it is gold standard. So with this, we come to the end of the multiple choice questions. Let's move on to the fill in the blanks, which is coming up. As income increases, demand curve for the normal goods shift automatically towards the right. That's where we have to start going towards it. This will go towards the right. SMC curve cuts at the minimum point. So when it goes beyond that minimum point altogether, let me put it there. Then, once it starts going down, we come to the shutdown point. Now, the question number 8, dash is determined at the point where demand for labor and supply. This is the MRPL, minimum wages, the rate factor that comes here into picture. So that's what gets defined. In a monopoly, no need to worry because we are not having it right now in the syllabus altogether. Now let's move on to the next question. As a part of revenue that is paid out, service. What would be paid out for a service rendered by the land? Automatically, it would be called as rent basis. So rent is one of the most important thing that is being paid as a part of the service. Now, match the following, which is going to be very, very easy for you. First question, it is market economy. Moment it's market economy, it is run by the private organizations. Next one, TFC plus TBC. So what does that lead into? Total cost. You get the second answer there. Perfect competition. What is perfect competition? That means there will be perfect information. Now the next one, Adam Smith. Adam Smith was the founder, the father of economics, who had defined about the operation of invisible hand, followed by GDP. Everybody knows the answer. That's gross domestic product. Now you can see that with just these three factors, choose the correct answer, fill in the blanks, match the following, you have scored 15 marks. So out of 80, already 15 is in your hands. Now let's go to the 1 mark questions, which is very, very important. Now you will get a choice here, starting with expand MRS. That is, you know that what we are going to talk about is the marginal rate of substitution. Just write that word, you get it. Marginal revenue, the extra revenue that is derived by one extra input. Price, floor pricing, that altogether, or we call it. Why? Because that is the minimum price that has been set by the government. Okay, monopoly question might not come in the modern syllabus. Final good, the good that is available for the consumption or for the use of the consumer. Autonomous consumption, one which happens automatically without any kind of external activity. What happens automatically is autonomous consumption. Progressive tax, which keeps moving up with the economy, which the movement of the consumption. Balance of trade, where you are able to pay back your deficit, that is your payments, versus that of the goods altogether. Now, let's get on to this factor of your 2 mark question, which is very, very important here. 6 questions you have to write here. This is also important. Now, you see from the beginning, you started with the fill in the blanks with the multiple choice question, 5 marks, fill in the blanks 5. Then you started going up to the match the following 5, 15, and 5, 1 mark. So 20 marks, 1/4 of the question paper is objective. 1/4 of the question paper. So 20 marks you are making it just by the multiple choice question and the objectives. So definitely you should be able to score well. Now let's get on to the 2 mark question. Let's start with the first one. What do you mean by inferior good? Give an example. An inferior good is a type of good whose demand declines when the income increases. This is the key word that you need to talk about. Why am I telling you this? Why? Because it tells the demand decreases when when income increases. So it's a reverse function altogether. That's why it is very, very important for all of us to work upon. Followed by state the law of demand. What is the law of demand all about? The law of demand is the most fundamental concept in economics. What does it say? The law of demand states that quantity purchased varies inversely with price. So price and demand are inversely proportional. So that's exactly where I would always try to bring into it. The price and demand factors are inversely proportional here. Followed by what is long run cost. So when you're talking about long run, to a period where all factors of the production and cost are variable, the goal is to produce at the lowest cost as far as possible. So when you're talking about the long run, that means the production can happen for more than a particular stand or a period altogether. That means it's not going to be within a year. I'm going to talk about productions which can happen for years together. So at that point of time, the costs are variable and the goal is to produce at the lowest cost. Followed by 2 determinants of the firm's supply curve. What we are talking about, since the price is one of the major factors, we are going to talk about 2 important things here, where we're going to talk about the factors other than the price. So one would definitely be the price factor and the technology factor. So these are the major determinants in a supply curve altogether. Followed by equilibrium price and quantity. The price where you see that the desire of consumers and the producers agree. So there is a point at which the consumers and the producers will meet up. This point exactly is the equilibrium price altogether. So that's what we are seeing it here in terms of equilibrium price and quantity. Right, the meaning of monopolistic, of course, this is not going to be there because we know that the monopolistic is gone out. But anyway, just for our understanding, monopolistic means a market structure where large number of firms compete for market share and each firm's product is similar to, not actually exact, but then they are similar in the range. So there would be a kind of competition that would exist in the market. Followed by the 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital and organization. Now, in your examination, it is possible that you might not be able to write the outcome factors. What does land exactly give? What does labor exactly give? What does capital exactly give? I might not know at that instant, but you need to know the four factors. What are the four factors? The four factors are land, labor, capital, and organization. So even if you write these four words, automatically you got your marks there. Now write the difference between nominal GDP and real GDP. Very important question. Let's start working on that. Nominal GDP is without the effects of inflation. Real GDP is only after the effects of inflation and deflation. That means the nominal would talk about current GDP at current prices. Real would reflect the current GDP at the past. That's a base year price altogether. CRR and SLR from the chapter 9, where we're talking about cash reserve ratio, the minimum cash proportion that the percentage of banks deposit to be held in the form of cash. So if the banks are having, let's say, 10,000 rupees in the form of deposit, and the RBI says 5% of this has to be maintained. So that means 500 rupees in the form of cash the bank has to maintain. The SLR, which stands for statutory liquidity ratio, is the minimum percentage of deposits the bank has to maintain in the form of gold, cash, or approved securities. So at any point of time, if you understand this, the RBI is creating a cushion for the bank to maintain the liquidity altogether. Followed by, now let's try to understand this factor very clearly. But now we start moving to the four markers, which is very important for us, because the four markers are definitely going to be a point where you would be able to score better. So let's have a look into it. Now, if you look here, 5 questions have to be written. This is a very, very common question that has always been repeated, where we talk about family, firm, weaver, teacher can use their resources. So when we are talking about a particular personality, about a family, a firm, a weaver and teacher, that means to say that each one of these personalities will be making use of a resource, and using the resource, they will be able to generate something output. That means they will be able to generate something valuable altogether. So that's where this starts coming into their thought process altogether. So now when you talk about it, now if you see here, you will be able to see that farmer would be using, for example, the investment. The family goes for farming. The firm would use some resources. The weaver would make use of the factor that he has some weaving machine. The teacher would use her knowledge. So like this, we have the appropriate resources through which the output is generated in the economy. The next one, substitutes and complement. The word substitute is quite easy, which means to say that the goods which are perceived to be alternative to one another by the consumer. That's where we are going to use this word substitute. So instead of tea, coffee. So that becomes a substitute altogether. So when the consumer consumes it, if the coffee is not available, I'll go for tea. So there is a vice versa, A versus B kind of thing. Now, complementary is that goes hand in hand. So, coffee with milk. Now, coffee and milk are supplementary goods. They are not complementary. They are complementary in nature. They don't become supplementary or a substitute kind of a thing altogether. When I talk about coffee and milk, they are goods where you will see that they go hand in hand. So that's where this word complementary comes in. A complements B. That means they go hand in hand. They serve the purpose altogether. So that's where it's important. Jointly to serve the purpose, we're talking about complementary goods. Next one, isoquant is a set of all possible combinations of two inputs that yield the maximum possible level of output. So whatever combination, land and labor, labor and capital, land and capital. So I am trying to use multiple inputs here, but the output would remain the same. That's where an isoquant is coming into picture, where I'm trying to put in all kinds of combinations possible. But what is happening to my output? The output is remaining maximum at the same level. So that is where I would call it as a isoquant altogether. And that's where, we need to understand that whatever changes the firm makes, the output should not change. It should remain constant at the same maximum level. followed by returns to scale. So we have the first one, constant return to scale. Next, we have increasing return to scale. Then we will have decreasing return to scale. Now, let's go one by one. What is constant returns to scale? When the proportional increase in input results in an increase of the output by same proportion. This is very, very important. So you are giving 10 as the input, the output also increases by 10. That means it's the same proportion. So you are constant altogether. Increasing, I give 10 as the input, but I get 20 as the output. That means increasing return, followed by decreasing return. Now, I give 10, but I get the output only as 5. Then that means it is a decreasing return to output altogether. So this is what one has to understand with regards to input and the output factor, followed by brief determinants of supply curve. Now, what is the first thing? As I've always told you in that 2-mark question, one, we talk about prices, the other we talk about the technological progress. See, today the concept of supply has to be understood very, very clearly. Why? Because supply does not happen just like that. Supply happens because there is an amount of thinking into it. The supply comes because there is a growth in technology. So I'm able to produce more, I'm able to supply more. The prices are less, the inventory cost, the basic, material cost is less. So I'm able to do that. So there are factors that comes into picture. Now that is very, very important for all of us. That is where people will understand that we are doing a fantastic job. We are actually able to give a good picture altogether. So that's why it is very important for all of us to understand how the system works. Without that, we would not be able to understand, we would not be able to go through how the system is actually getting into picture. So what we do typically here is that we try to understand, we try to go forward in terms of understanding the technological and the input prices. Increase in technology will help you to produce better, supply increases. Decrease in the inventory cost, the input prices rises or the production cost rises, that would also change the supply curve altogether. Followed by features of perfect competition. This is quite important and a simple thing. We know that the first thing is that information is available. Buyers and sellers have no barriers. Buyers and sellers want to maximize the profit. Too many sellers and too many buyers. All goods are homogeneous and no government gets involved. There are no costs. So this is typically an idealistic market picture in the mind of a consumer. One has to understand that this would not exist in a real market. In a real market, there are 101 barriers and challenges to be understood. But when you just talk about the word idealistically perfect competition, this would be there. Where, you would see exact number of buyers and sellers, not much of competition. There is only a homogeneous product. The profit is at the maximized level. Whatever price you are selling, people are ready to buy at that price. So things look very much greenish in this market because you would see that there is no challenge at all. There's no barriers for you in terms of going forward and selling your product. Now, the next thing, macroeconomics, how it is different from micro. Now, let's understand the difference between macro and micro. Very, very important. Macro is the word where we are going to study about the economy as a whole, which means to say that when I study Indian economy, that means I'm studying about the country India with all the parameters taken into account, which would include labor, unemployment. I'm talking about, let's say, housing. I might be talking about income. I might be talking about GDP. I'm putting all the 101 factors into it. There might be multiple things, but I'm studying the entire context as one. So the study of the entire economy as a whole is called as a macroeconomics, whereas micro is focused on an individual behavior, individual needs and wants. So what is micro? Micro is a study about more about you and me, about that individual needs and wants. So that's a major difference between micro and macroeconomics. Followed by, let's get to the 6 marks this time. 3 into 6, 18 marks are coming up. So starting with the law of diminishing marginal utility, very, very common and most repeated question I would like to say here. According to the law of diminishing marginal utility, good diminishes as the individual consumes more and more of the good. So what is actually happening is that the utility value of the good diminishes. Now let's say the first time when you have a cup of ice cream, you are delighted, you are excited. The second, it's good. The third, okay. Fourth, I don't want because I'm saturated. Now what is happening is that the utility, the want satisfying capacity inside me is decreasing. So when I talk about that diminishing marginal utility, which means to say that the utility value is diminishing, it's coming down, it is taking a dive completely. So that's where it is very, very important for all of us to understand this. It should be carefully noted that the marginal utility and total utility are that declines with the increase factor in the consumption of the good. The law of diminishing marginal utility means that total utility increases but at a decreasing rate. So this is very, very important for all of us to understand. Followed by features of indifference curve. Definitely a diagram would come where you have to explain the description using the graph point of view, where you have to say that there's no intersection. It is always on the higher end, and higher the indifference curve, the satisfaction level also goes up. Now, the next one is the simultaneous shift in demand and supply, which we were talking about. So both the supply curve and demand curve would shift rightwards. There'll be one more situation where they shift leftwards, one shifting on the left, one shifting on the right. Similarly, one shifting the rightwards and the demand moving towards the leftward. So you will have 4 possible combinations altogether. Followed by which, this is the demand schedule curve, where they would ask you this. You have to just use the formula and you will be able to derive the value here. Now, once when you come to the POQ, the project oriented, they have retained 2 into 5, 10, same. This is the most common thing that they would be asking you. So you know this, you have been repeatedly doing it very, very clearly. So there's not much of the thing to know about. How much bananas can a consumer spend if she spends the entire income on that good? So now you know that the price of banana is 5 rupees and the income is 40 rupees. So 40 divided by 5, the first one, you would get 8 as the answer. How much mango she can consume? 40 divided by 10, you will get the answer as 4. Now automatically the slope is always going downwards. A budget line equal to income? Definitely not. They would change, but yes, it moves into that factor. If you want more bananas, yes, you have to give it up on in terms of the mangoes. Followed by the same thing, you have to just apply the formula here, put the formula here, and you will be able to get the answer. You have to just apply the formula TR, MR, and AR, which would already known in that. Use the formula, you would be able to substitute and get the answer. Followed by write a note on demonetization. This is one question that has been repeated. That demonetization, most of us know when it happened. They tried to do it because to reduce the black money supply in the market. The 500 rupee note and 1000 rupee note were banned by the government. Instead, they gave 2000 rupee note and a new 500 rupee note came. The aim of demonetization was to reduce the black money and make the economy corruption free. So that's the main idea of demonetization. It is not undervaluing the currency, but cleaning up the economy. Now, we can write down the values here. Just take any 5. I would go with USA, UK, Germany, Japan, and I would like to go with UAE, which is easier for us, or even you can go with China. For USA, the answer is dollar. Now for UK, the answer is pound. Now for when we start going for Germany, it is euro. Now if you're going for Japan, it is yen. That is the answer. And if you're going to take UAE, you would be writing the answer as dirham. So this is the answer altogether. Just remember this 5 country. USA is dollar, UK is pound, Germany is euro, Japan is yen, UAE is dirham. You write this and you get your 5 marks. So with all these factors, please keep in your mind before writing the paper. This time the paper has been created in such a way that every one of us can score the maximum marks. Now let me just break down the system here for you. The section A, we have 20 marks coming in form of objectives and 1 mark. The section B, you have 2 markers which you can fetch 12. 6 into 2, 12 marks is available. The section E, which is 2 into 5, 10. That's project-oriented question. So just look here. More than 50% of the paper is already done. 42 marks you are able to score by just answering the section A, B and E. So concentrate on these 3 sections. Automatically you will be able to score more than 50%. Plus, if you get your 20 marks in your internals, so 42 plus 20, that is 62 total, you have already got a first class in economics. So it is very easy for us this time to score a 60 plus. No need to worry at all. A little bit of effort here and there, you would cross 90 plus in your final examination. With this, I come to the end of the model paper discussion in second PUC economics. I hope and believe all the questions and tips that have been discussed through this session will be of a great help to you in the final examination and you would come up with flying colors. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session. You have a great day ahead.